Great Scott. Great Scott. Great Scott.
Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in once again to another fine episode of Great Scott. I'm Scotty V, and thanks for watching. So, we've had a number of TV announcements, TV things going on, TV excitement in the comic book world happening over the last few months and weeks. Marvel got into TV, and apparently it was a big hit, even though I tried to watch S.H.I.E.L.D. I watched about 2 episodes, and I thought it was too silly and too goofy. So I stopped. I heard it got better, so maybe I'm going to try and get back to it. But the thing is, there's so many great things on TV, and for the most part, they're not comic book related, although we're coming into the TV age of comic books. For a while, people have been saying, God, aren't comic book movies all kind of washed out? Haven't we seen enough? Haven't there, what else can they do? Aren't they going to run off at some point? And they're still gangbusters. They're still huge. Everybody's still rushing to make one. And now we got the whole TV boom going on. I think Marvel is going to have a great thing happening once that Netflix deal goes on. I think they've already made the deal. They're just making the shows. Netflix can do great things on their thing. I guess it's a streaming service. I have it. I love it. And they released their whole season in one shot. House of Cards, great show. Very adult shows, very well-written shows, and they can take things as far as they want to. Now, you might figure a comic book show doesn't need to go that far because it should be for family audiences, but sometimes not. When you have a show like The Punisher or something like that, where you can really get into grittiness, and there's going to be some violence, and he's a hitman, and it's a serious thing, then maybe you don't need to make everything so family-friendly. For instance, I watched Gotham the other night when it premiered. We're in the week of the Gotham premiere, and even though this is a Superman homepage, I will talk a little bit about it. It was gritty and violent enough while still being on a regular network. It's on Fox, and I loved the show. I think that the death of Bruce Wayne's parents has never been showed in a more brutal fashion, which doesn't necessarily make it good, but it was very hard. It was much more difficult to watch. It was hurtful, it was brutal, and I found myself wondering, what did he kill them for? And we've all seen the story before, and we know how it goes, and we know that it eventually helped shape the man that Bruce will become. But this show is more about Gordon and Gotham before there was a Batman, even though Bruce is in the show, and the relationship between the two characters is going to figure very prominently. It's also going to be about showing the formation of some of Batman's greatest villains, and this season is going to focus on the Penguin and his relationship with a made-up character for the show called Fish Mooney, played by Jada Pinkett Smith. I really enjoyed it. I mean, for me, I was taken back to 1989 when, at 14 years old, I saw a little movie called Batman by Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson, and it's still, to this day, and probably will always be, the movie that I saw the most times at the theater. I remember going, I remember seeing it 7 times, I remember counting, I remember being proud of the fact that I saw it 7 times. I remember being excited and inspired, and I remember feeling heroic walking out, and I remember being ultimately and hugely disappointed when Batman Returns came out, and I realized it was all over. Because the big excitement for it was there, and then it just kind of let me down, and the rest of that series just went further and further down. And you know how I feel about the Nolan series. I think it's about heart and character and depth. I'm talking to a Batman fan recently who hates the Burton movie because it's so far from canon and it changes so many things, and Batman kills in the movie. And when you're 14, those kind of things, I didn't know that much about Batman canon, and I didn't care that much about the fact that the Joker didn't kill his parents or whatever. I thought it was neat that they had done it that way. And I wished they hadn't killed the Joker at the end, but I never looked at it as Batman killed him. I looked at it as Batman was hanging on for his life and didn't want the Joker to get away, so he tied him to the gargoyle and figured that the helicopter would stop and he'd be trapped there and the police would come or whatever. I don't think he thought it out. He was hanging there and he made a desperate attempt to keep the Joker around, and then the Joker ended up falling to his death. Unlike in Batman Begins, where he knows that Ra's al Ghul, who I guess isn't really Ra's al Ghul, is going to die and says, I don't have to save you, but I'm not going to help you. In that moment, he made the decision to allow him to die when he could have done something about it. I think that that's worse than an accidental death when trying to stop a criminal who had killed millions from getting away. But I love Gotham. Watch it if you haven't. The other thing I wanted to continue up on, I started with last week, is Supergirl. When I recorded my show last week, it had been, we haven't been to the networks yet, so we don't know what's going to go on, but we'll let you know when we start to get something together. And a few hours later, CBS has picked up the show, and it's going to be on TV. It's going to be great. Now, I don't know how the ratings were for Gotham last night. I hope it did well. It's unusual that a regular network is able to pull off a genre show like this. Not because they can't write it, not because they can't do it, as proof by the pilot of Gotham. But I've seen a lot of good genre shows on networks that go away because the ratings just aren't good enough. I still talk to Smallville fans who say, oh, you didn't love Smallville like I did, but it's proof positive that it was great because it's the longest-lasting Superman story that's ever been on TV. And while that's true, I still say the reason for that is that it was on the CW. And on the CW, 2 million viewers is fantastic. 2 million viewers on Fox for this Gotham will not do it. It's hard to keep a show on when it's in the double digits millions. If it gets 10 million, it's going to be a bubble show. It's going to be a show they're going to have to try and rescue. It's going to be a show they're going to have to go to bat for. And Supergirl, I think, has an even smaller fan base and has an even smaller interest among comic book people, as I talked about on this week's Radio KAL. A coveted demographic for the networks is females, 18 and younger and 18 and older, and it's very difficult to capture them because typically females don't care as much about genre shows. Females don't care as much about TV in general, and they don't care that much about movies. So the driving force a lot of times behind films, and it gets a lot of people mad because there aren't a lot of great women parts, is what will drive the men to see these shows and watch television and watch these movies, because we haven't been able to solve women. And I think it would be great if we could get a woman-driven show like Supergirl on television. I'll watch it, and I'm a man, and I know a lot of guys, Steve Eunice and other people who are Superman fans and Supergirl fans will watch it. It's weird. It's going to be a 24-year-old Supergirl, and it's going to be on CBS. So 2 million's not going to cut it, 10 million's not going to cut it, and I just don't know if you can capture 15 or more million with a Supergirl show. She's a secondary character in Superman. I talked about this last week. But I would love it if we could. I think that CBS might have been the wrong way to go, just like I think Fox is a difficult way to go with Gotham. But Fox has had a little bit better time with horror shows and genre shows and sci-fi shows than any of the other networks. So let's see what happens. I'm excited. I'm excited about the ongoingness of Gotham. I love the episode. I didn't want it to end. And I hope I can be this excited about Supergirl for years and years to come. I hope it stays on. I think there needs to be some involvement with Superman, and I don't know how they're going to do that. I was thinking about it today, and the Kents were a prominent force in her life in many of the incarnations. She lived with the Kents. She learned from the Kents, much like Clark did. She learned from Clark. She trained with Clark. At some point, she trains with the Amazons. All that stuff's not going to happen, I realize, but there's a lot of potential for cameos and pieces, and I think Ma and Pa Kent could have a prominent role on the show, but maybe they don't want to do that because Smallville did it for 10 years. But she went there, and she learned there, and she lived there, and she was protected and felt safe there. And if she's waiting till she's 24 to get started as Supergirl, I could see her doing that on the farm and honing things and being taught by the Kents and that kind of thing. And maybe Martha could have a heavier role in her formation. You know, it's usually Jonathan who has the role in these movies and things with Clark. And Martha's the only one around for the sequels to Man of Steel because they decided to kill off Jonathan again, which I hate when they do. But maybe it can be we can have some strong females on Arrow. There are some strong feminine presences. So far on Gotham, not as much, but Fish Mooney is female, and Gordon and Bullock's boss is female. So maybe we'll see some development there. But I'm liking where we're at. I'm liking the era that we're in. Lots of comic book movies all the time, and now lots of comic book television. Let's support it. Let's watch it. Let's keep it going. Thanks everybody for watching, and remember, tune in next week. Great Scott time. Great Scott channel.